So today I'm getting to chat with someone who her name is Caro Chambers, Carolyn, but she goes by Caro. And she's in a very interesting part of the media world. And we're going to learn all about it today. We're going to learn how she's, I wouldn't say a Kardashian, but the Kardashians opened my eyes to the value of fame or
Yeah.
infamy and building interest and then taking it further like you've had to create community. And that could be fun, it can be interesting, it can be a career, and it can be financially rewarding. And we'll explore that today because I think the work you're doing, Caro, is interesting. And of course, now you're getting to work with our companies. You're working with Harry and David, and we'll get into that later. But tell us about you, Caro. I heard recently that you were born a small child. Where was that?
Yes, I love that you're comparing me to a Kardashian. I have to say that's a first, but I understand what you mean in that they have taken their sort of like popularity and fame and turned that into all these different businesses. Yeah.
I didn't get it at first. It wasn't until I think one of them got married and I read that they made, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars on the wedding, making an event. And so I didn't fully appreciate how just being famous could be of great value.
Yeah, the influencer game is a real one. It's a real, way to be earning an interesting living these days. But let's go back. I was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Nice spot.
Yeah, it is a beautiful spot. Wake Forest University is there. It's a really beautiful small town in North Carolina. My dad is from there. My mom is from Tennessee. And they met at UNC Chapel Hill, where 18 years later, after I was born, I also met my husband at UNC Chapel Hill. So it runs in the family. Yeah, I was born in Winston-Salem.
By the way, a really pretty place to go to school. Good school, great sports, but it's also just a beautiful area.
It's shockingly beautiful. My husband and I hadn't been back since the weekend when we got engaged, which was the year after I graduated. So 2012. We hadn't been back since 2012. And we went back a month ago for the UNC State game. And he's on a board. And so he had some stuff to do. And we had the best weekend. We spent 3 nights, had amazing meals.
No kids?
No kids.
Wow.
I have to say the no kids thing was amazing. However, the Carolina Inn, which was like this big, historic, beautiful inn, huge grassy lawn, right kind of in the middle of campus where everyone congregates before big games.
And you say, why didn't we bring the kids? I wanted them to see this. I want them to want to go here.
And there are like kids running around in their little basketball jerseys, and everyone looks so cute. And we were like, okay, next time we come. But,
and they're all in Carolina blue.
Oh, they were all in Carolina blue. It was just so dear that we were like, oh man. And we also have to start grooming them. We're in California, so we got to get them obsessed with Carolina basketball so that they'll want to go back, so that we have a reason to go back someday. And they have to meet their future spouses at Carolina. It's
absolutely, you got to keep this going.
Yeah, it's a family tradition.
So you guys met there. And your husband is George, right?
My husband is George. We met, he was a couple years older than me. So we met at a party on a farm, like any two good North Carolina kids should do. We met at farm party. It's literally called farm party. My freshman spring, his junior spring. He was training to go into the military after school. So we met. I very quickly learned, like, oh, you're talking to George Hodgen? Like, he wants to be a Navy SEAL. He wants to be a Navy SEAL. And I was like, oh, what is a Navy SEAL? I'm like an 18-year-old. I don't know anything. And I very quickly learned what a Navy SEAL was because I married one. He eventually trained. He graduated from UNC, trained, became a SEAL. And so that's how we ended up out in California with that.
And is he still in the military?
He's not. He did 8 years active duty, 2 years kind of inactive duty, it's called. If something happened, he would have been called back. So he got out in 2015 and went to business school, and he was trying to decide where to go to school. And I said, honey, now that you've taught me about California, I can't leave California. So he went to Stanford Business School so that we could stay in California. And that was a really great
hardest
experience.
Business school to get in the country right now.
It is. And he's kind of an overachiever. So he was like, okay, fine.
Well, sounds like it. After university, he goes into the military. That's you hear that a lot, particularly about people who want to go into special forces. These are the overachievers of the overachievers.
It's almost like I feel like he read about Navy SEALs. He can't remember what set him down this trajectory, but I almost feel like he's such an overachiever, and so are all of his SEAL friends. I almost feel like they read when they were like second graders, like, what's the hardest job in the world? And they were like, Navy SEAL. They were like, got it. Bingo, zero in, that's the goal. Because he can't remember like the one clear moment in his life when he said, okay, I'm going to become a Navy SEAL, but he's been training for it since he was like in fifth grade. Like he would wake up early and go run sprints around the middle school track. And yeah.
It seems to me that there's quite a fraternity of special ops folks, that they stay connected. They know where one another are. They know where one another are in their life stage and where things are going, how things are going for each other. Is that a correct assessment? A real fraternal kind of community?
Absolutely. And I would say, yeah, I asked him the other day, how often do you talk to military people? And I think he has really, when he got out, he was one of the first of his SEAL friends to get out of the military. And so he kind of paved a way. He went to business school. He's an entrepreneur. He started his own business. And so he gets a lot. He sort of has made it his passion to share with guys that trajectory. And because I think a lot of military guys, they spent their entire lives, like I said, from second grade, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And then it comes time to get out and they go, what's next? What do I do now? And George has really made it his passion to share it with other guys. So he's talking to either a friend or a friend of a friend of a friend or a friend's brother's, second cousin's sister about what he did when he got out. And I will say, I think there's also a relationship between the wives is what I'm trying to get at.
Is that right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So the SEAL wife and girlfriend community was also incredibly strong. We were in Norfolk for a very short stint. And then, so there's two SEAL bases, Norfolk and San Diego. And then back to San Diego. I have such incredible friendships, and most of my SEAL wife friends are still SEAL wives. And when we started, we were like going to concerts every Saturday. When the guys were out of town, we were like having girls' nights. We were partying. We were like having fun. We were having beach bonfires. Now, 15 years later, they're all moms of 2, 3, 4 kids, and their husbands are deploying for 6 months at a time, maybe 9 months at a time, maybe a year. It totally depends. And they are doing this with 4 kids, a lot of them with full-time jobs, with their husbands just constantly on the road. And they are like my complete heroes and incredible women.
This gets to the heart of one of your motivations, that is, you've gone through this and you know what was important to you in terms of support, community, and just relationships that mattered to you when that was your life. And now tell us about how you raise money each year to support the causes and the charities that support the spouse of the deployed person.
So I started growing this kind of Instagram community during COVID. I was one of the many people who sort of had a career change during COVID. Prior to COVID, I was a freelance recipe developer. I'd written a cookbook. I'd ghostwritten a lot of cookbooks for celebrities, and I really enjoyed that. However, I always wanted to kind of have my own brand and community that I could share recipes directly from, share thoughts directly from. So during COVID, when all the freelance recipe development gigs went away because no brands knew how to market their food during a pandemic, I looked at my husband and I was like, all right, I don't have any jobs coming in. Everybody's canceled all of my spring, summer work. I think this is my chance to really try to grow my own presence. And I just started cranking out recipes on Instagram. Instagram, my website, I grew a newsletter, just really grew my own following through being there for the people that followed me. And then they would say, hey, Caro Chambers does this cool thing where, you can tell her what's in your kitchen, what's in your pantry, and she'll tell you a meal to cook. And so I would share those. And I just really quickly was able to grow a loyal following by very honestly sharing, I was pregnant with my second son. My first son was 12 months. Here's how I'm keeping him entertained. We don't have any help and I'm trying to grow this business and here's how we're doing that. Here's how we're balancing it. And it was just everybody was going through the same thing. So seeing somebody else on their phones, on their screens who was going through it was kind of a comfort. And
Comfort, sure.
yeah. So anyway, I was able to grow this community. And I think the first Christmas, so Christmas 2020 came up, and it was the first time I'd ever had a community of my own. And I had a lot of military followers because, people realized that I was a SEAL spouse, and the relationships I've had. Like I always joke that my followers are all like, 6 degree of separation of my cousins, my SEAL wife friends, and my UNC friends, because those are the people who when I was trying to start out, I was like, hey guys, I just posted a recipe, like go like it. And I'd get 20 likes. That was all my friends. Go share it.
Did you know, Caro, as you started this, that you could do this? There weren't a lot of role models of people having done this. Yes, there was a lot of talk about influences. And yes, as people were quarantined of sorts, staying in place, they turned to this medium or these sets of mediums more frequently, more robustly, and in greater quantities. But did you have a sense of the path you were going down to what it could become? Could you have written it on a piece of paper?
I definitely could not have sat down and written it on a piece of paper. I had an idea of growing my own brand, and I didn't know exactly what that meant. I'm sure you've gotten this too, where you just read like a random piece of business advice and it ends up really influencing you, and you're like, where did I even read that?
Only daily.
Early lockdown days, I remember reading something that said, if you're trying to grow, your own internet brand, like you're trying to be an influencer or a creator or whatever, the most important thing you can do is grow your email list, because that's the only thing that you own. And every single time I email people, it will reach their eyes. So the Instagram algorithm changes off frequently. Like one day I'll post a recipe. The other day I posted a recipe for egg salad, and it has like 300,000 likes, 10 million views. And then I'll post, and it took me, 4 minutes to create. I have no idea why the algorithm liked it so much. And then the next day I'll work on a recipe for 10 hours, high production value, super tested recipe, and it'll get 2,000 likes. And I'm like, what? So you are not in control of how your recipes or your content.
You see, but now my mouth is watering because I love egg salad.
You need to make my recipe. It's really good. So I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense.
So of the few 100,000 followers that you have, how many of those do you have email addresses for?
Well, that's a good question. So I have about 215,000 or something Instagram followers, and I have 160,000 email followers. So
wow, that's terrific.
I have a pretty high conversion rate, and then I have 20,000 of those are paid subscribers, so they receive all of my paid content.
And where do you do that? That's on Substack?
Yes, Substack, exactly. Substack's the fastest growing independent publishing platform in the world. So they basically looked at writers at New York Times, Washington Post, and saw A, they're not getting to write exactly what they want, B, they are not highly paid, and so they basically gave writers the opportunity to take their writing and their community into their own hand.
I think it's brilliant, and I follow several people on Substack that I think are just really talented. I want to read everything they write.
I know, me too. Yeah, it's a really really cool place, and I really encourage, even if you only have 1,000 followers, like start your Substack, start writing what you want. You can grow a community by demonstrating who you are through your writing.
So what influence is mom, the entrepreneur, what impact do you think that's having on them and how they think about what home is like? There's no separation between work and home. Remember, people used to talk about that until they really realized that the best world is, I can't tell when I'm working and I'm not, because I so enjoy what I do. What influence does it have on the household?
That's a great question. I think that whether you're a stay-at-home parent or a working parent, you can convince yourself that what you're doing is the best thing for your kids, right? So I think that the way that working moms convince themselves that, okay, this time away from my kids, or them having to take the back seat while I say, hold on, Callum, give me 10 minutes. I have to finish this call with Jim, or whatever it is. The way that I sort of feel great about that is that they are learning patience and that their needs can't always come first, that in a family, everybody has to kind of work together and all of our needs have to be met to make this ship run. And they are learning about hard work and what it takes to put in. Like when my kids want to go to the park on a Friday morning, I very clearly explained to them, okay, I can go to the park with you, but first I have a call with Adam to discuss my book tour next month. And then I have to film 2 recipes for Harry and David, and then we can go to the park. Does that make sense? And they're like, yes, okay, that makes sense. Mommy has to work first. And I hear them tell their friends.
And when you're in the kitchen and powder is flying and flour's flying rather, and utensils are going and stirring's happening, do they ever want to get their fingers in? They must.
Absolutely. And I think that my content became interesting and people started to really want to follow me at scale when I started including my kids in my content. There was a period when I first started this, early 2020, when I was trying to be this perfect content creator. My recipes are perfect. I'm dialed, like there's no background noise. My kitchen's clean. Here's your perfect recipe from your perfect content creator. And those were getting some likes, but it wasn't getting a ton of traction. And 2020, my baby was screaming in the background. I was pregnant. The kitchen was a mess. And I
You were
couldn't
real.
create content unless it was messy. And so I was having to weigh pros and cons. Do I make really beautiful, well lit, well produced content? Or do I just crank it out and it looks exactly like what it is? And I went with crank it out and it is exactly what it is. And that's when the real growth started. And that's when I think it went from having a bunch of followers to having a real community, because people were like, oh, she gets it. Her kids are barefoot running around in the yard. He's been wearing only a diaper for 3 days because she's exhausted. She has poop on her sweatshirt from this morning and it hasn't changed yet. That's when the real magic started to happen. And that's when, like you were just saying, that's when I went from feeling like this was a job to feeling like, oh, this is just kind of a part of my life and I get to share it. And yes, it is work, but I enjoy it because it's truly who I am and I'm getting to share exactly who I am.
Well, I think you're right. I think what you're doing is going to have a tremendously positive influence on your kids for the reasons you mentioned: discipline, realizing they're not the center of the universe, a lot of other things are going on, patience, all of those things I think they're going to learn. But I think they're going to be so more well equipped for the world as it will be when it's of consequence to them as they reach college age at all, that it's like super training. I remember, I'm the other end of the spectrum. I'm sneaking up on Heaven's door now, but I remember parents my age were concerned about our kids playing video games, and they were not the video games of today. These are early console games. And little did we know that we were denying them some training on life skills that they were going to need. And now that we have a fully digital generation there, you see that the skill sets that they acquire or need to acquire are changing with every half generation. And so I think you're doing good things that'll really matter to your kids.
That's so funny to think about. Those kids who were allowed to play the video games are now the tech gurus running
Exactly.
Silicon Valley. That's
now tell me, one of your friends has a great name. Her name is Heather Looney.
It is a great name.
And it sounds like she should be appearing at a comedy club someplace
Totally.
on Thursday night. So what do you and Heather do vis-a-vis the money you raise to support people in the positions that you used to be in?
So Heather is a friend who I made just through Instagram. Heather's husband is an Army captain, really high up, incredible guy, and his cousin was a Navy SEAL who was killed in Afghanistan. His name was Brendan Looney, and he was an awesome guy. He went to the Naval Academy with a lot of George's friends, so lots of overlap there. And it just happened that the Looney, Brendan's sisters, started following me on Instagram, totally, I think, removed from the SEAL connection even, just kind of found me, liked my recipes. During COVID, I started doing a lot of private Zoom classes. Like, you'd hire me for your birthday party and we'd all cook a meal together from all of our kitchens all over the world because it was a way of connecting. And the Looney girls hired me. I can't remember if it was a bridal shower or a birthday party, but Heather was on it. So that's how she found me. And so when I started, after I kind of built up this community, this is what I was saying earlier, and we never got to it. In December 2020 was the first Christmas that I had like my own following and like my own ability to raise funds and do something interesting for my community. I said something on Instagram to the point in early December, to the point of, if you have a military spouse or family in your life who has a deployed spouse this Christmas, like be sure to think of them this Christmas. Like, here are some ideas for things you could do for them. I remember my first Christmas without George, and it was so hard, and my village like wrapped me up. And a lot of these military families are in, New Mexico, Texas, like they're all over Japan, they're all over the world, away from their family, away from their village. Think of the people in your life. If it's an old friend from high school, send them a note. If it's an old friend, if it's a friend from college, send them a Christmas wreath, whatever, think of them. And so many of my Instagram followers instantly, like within 2 hours, I had thousands of messages, and I still only had like 10,000 Instagram followers at this point. Thousands of messages that were like, whoa, I never thought of this. Like, it's so easy to forget about our military families because they're just not at the forefront. What can we do? How can I support this? Because I think I had said something like, I'm sending these care packages to my 4 SEAL wife best friends or whatever. They're like, what can we do to support this? How, can we raise funds? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I was like, whoa, yeah, we could actually, because I knew that a lot of my community was military spouses with spouses deployed, young kids at home, husbands who missed the births of their kids. Like, I'd heard lots of these stories. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I made like a, donation link. And I was like, if anybody wants to give, let's spread some Christmas cheer. If anybody wants to help, here's where you can donate. And Jim, I think I was like putting the kids down to sleep or something, and came back, and I had like $20,000 in my Venmo account, and like in
Wow.
45 minutes. And I was like, what just happened? And like, I go to bed, I wake up that night or the next morning, and there's like 45,000, and it just goes on and on. And honestly, it got to the point, Instagram stories only are live for 24 hours. It got to the point where I was raising so much money that I was like excited for the link to expire so that people would stop donating. Cause I was like, I thought I was going to get $10,000. I'd do a, $1,000 gift for this person, send a, Harry and David to them, a bouquet to them. Like, I thought that was it. And I had so much money, and I'm not I didn't have a 501c3 set up, anything. It's just little old me, with 2 kids, like trying to get my job done. All of a sudden I had this huge, massive amount of funds. So I reached out to Heather Looney, because when you're the spouse of a guy or, a woman who is that high up in the military, you have a full-time job it's like being the vice president, right? It's like being Madam President. You have a full job. Like, you are taking care of the other spouses. You're in communication with the chaplain. So many of our service members are on food stamps because they make minimum, like they're making,
which is crazy,
which is
just
criminal.
Yep.
They're on food stamps. So they're setting up like food banks that these families can come and shop from. And so I called Heather, I DM'd her because she was just my internet friend, I DM'd her at this time. I DM'd her and was like, Heather, I just raised $65,000. We need to make some Christmas miracles happen for military families. Who needs it? Who's the most deserving? And she was like, I'm on it. And Heather really, I had like, 15 families who I knew directly that we could serve.
Yeah, but that doesn't scale.
That doesn't scale. And so she helped me get this money in the right hands. She was in Fort Benning at the time. They've moved like 3 times since then. She was in Fort Benning, Georgia at the time. And they do this incredible, because there's a lot of, families in need in Fort Benning, really low paid military service people. And if you're a service person and you're moving around constantly, it's really hard for your spouse to get a job. So these families are really scraping by. So they did this massive, it's called Santa's Castle, and they create this huge like Santa village, and kids get like a ticket and they get to go in and pick out any toy they wanted. And they were really struggling to raise funds for that. And with these funds, my community, like we went in overnight and wiped out their entire wish list. Like it was like done. Like what's next? So we
How
did
great a
that.
feeling was that?
It was incredible. We were able to pay for like a night nurse doula for like 5 moms who were having babies in December and January, and their husbands weren't going to be able to come home for like 6 months, and they had no family nearby. We were able to fly family members in to help moms who have young kids whose husbands were away for the holidays. It was incredible. And so that kind of set this whole thing in motion. And now we do it every Veterans Day, we do a little thing. And every Christmas, we do this, like we send Christmas cheer thing. And it's pretty incredible.
How close are you and Heather now?
Oh, she's like I feel like she's one of my best friends, and I've never met her in person.
No
Ever.
kidding.
Hopefully I will. She's stationed. I mean, I won't say where she's stationed now, but I'm hoping. So my book, What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking, comes out August 13th, and I'll be on a pretty like 15 cities tour, and I am hoping that Heather can be like the star and be at one of my events.
I would guess that 4 years ago, 5 at the most, that if someone said to me, you could have one of your best friends, one of the closest relationships, and you can go years before you'll ever meet for the first time. Yeah. And you would have looked at them like, what are you, crazy?
Yeah, what are you, crazy?
But it can happen, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you get a mom of 3 combined with a military spouse who's moving every 2 months, combined with COVID-19, and bam, that is a recipe for an internet friendship.
So you mentioned August 13th. Tell us about the new book.
Yes. So my newsletter, my Substack is called What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking. I launched it December of 2020 also. I launched it in December of 2020, and if you will go back with me, December of 2020, everyone was past their like sourdough phase. Everyone had,
I don't want to see another puzzle.
Not another puzzle. Everyone had made 15 batches of banana bread for months on end. Like everyone was so sick of cooking, and they still had to. They were still forced to be at home cooking their meals. And so I started this newsletter, or the Substack, that is a weekly recipe. So it comes every Saturday to your inbox. It takes under an hour. It's a complete meal. So if you look in a cookbook, it's like chicken, and it's like just the roast chicken, and then you have to flip to the vegetable chapter, and then you have to flip to the salad chapter.
And you did it by clustering real meals.
These people don't feel like cooking. They certainly don't feel like finding 3 different recipes.
Now they can see a full meal. You don't want to be there. We're going to make it easy for you, and it strings together.
Full meal, under an hour. Here's what pairs with the chicken. Here's what to make on the side while you're doing that. You can throw it all in one sheet pan. And so it really resonated with my followers. Again, in December 2020, I had about 10,000 Instagram followers. I figured, I'll launch this thing, and I'm already creating 1 recipe a week at least, and just sharing it for free on my Instagram. So there's no downside here. It's not like if only Jim subscribes, like that's okay. Like I'll send it to Jim. And
you're already doing the work. It's about compiling and editing.
Yeah. So I started it, and overnight I got like 500 paid subscribers, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this could be a thing. And in fact, at that point, I thought like, max, like I could make $100,000 a year doing this. Like, whoa. And as a freelance recipe developer, I was making max that, because like really max that, because again, you're trading your time for money.
Selling time. Yep.
Selling time. And so I got 500 subscribers overnight. Christmas was a great time to launch right before, because people had like 2 weeks of learning what it is. I hyped it up so much those first 2 weeks of December. And then it became like, oh, I'm obsessed with, I love Caroline's recipes. She just launched this new thing. I'm going to get it for my 5 friends for Christmas. Done. So it was this huge like Christmas gift. And so Christmas just exploded it into the internet sphere. And I would say by January 2021, I had like 1,500 paid subscribers. And at this point, I'm like, I think at that point I was selling it for $35, which is the price of a cookbook, because I was like, don't get a cookbook, get this. So I really compared it a lot to a cookbook back then. And so I really had this like little profitable business going all of a sudden, and all of a sudden had, you know, resources to pour into it. I got an editor who's still with me, really started to grow it. And so basically it's continued to grow. I now have 20,000 paid subscribers, about 160 unpaid subscribers. So they, you know, they get the paywall recipe and it's my job to convert them. 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, January, an editor reached out to me, an editor who's with Union Square Publishing in New York, reached out to me on Instagram and was like, "Hi, I've been following you for about a year. I'm really interested in working with you. What's your agent's name?" And so I gave her my literary agent's name. And I just had my third baby, and she reached out to my agent, who she already knew, and was like, "Listen, I know Caro's on maternity leave, but when she comes back, I want her to write a book with me. She doesn't have to write a proposal. Her Substack is her proposal. Writing a cookbook proposal, Jim, is like the biggest pain in the world. It's like 40 pages long, full sample chapter, 20 sample recipes. Like, who are your famous friends who will share this? It's such a pain." And so I didn't want to do it.
Convince me that there's no risk and this will sell a lot of copies.
Exactly. Convince me there's no risk and I'll sell a lot of copies. She was like, "You don't have to do that. Just your Substack. And I see how engaged your audience is. That is your proposal. Here's the number. Do you accept?" Was it? And I was like, "Oh, all right. I guess I'm writing a cookbook.
Hit the bid.
I guess I'm writing a cookbook." So What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking, the book, is coming out August 13th of this year. And it's the same concept as the newsletter, 100 plus complete meal recipes. So not a lot of cookbooks are formatted this way. They're typically like protein, vegetable, appetizer, soup, salad. This is your whole thing. So if it has a side salad, it's a part of that hour. It's a part of the 1-page recipe. Every single recipe takes only 1 page, minimal ingredients. Basically my like promise to you is that it'll take as few ingredients, as little time, and as few dishes as possible. Dishes, I think, are like the big thing that block a lot of people from enjoying cooking and like finding the joy of it all, because they're like, "Ugh, I'm gonna eat this for 5 minutes and then have to clean up." Well, I like give
for
you
5
strategies.
hours.
Yeah, 5 hours. And so I give you like a lot of strategies and ways to reduce the cleanup. So I'm really excited about that. I mean, Heather's just a small example of the community that I've built around the country, around the world. And this book tour will really be an opportunity to get to meet so many people.
Well, that's what's going to happen. You know,
Yeah,
you're going to be in a city,
really
your community's going to find out about it. There's going to be an overwhelming amount of inbound inputs.
I hope so.
That'll certainly make you feel good and make you realize what you've built out there in terms of a genuine community.
Yeah. It's going to be cool. It's going to be wild to meet all these people who I, message with. I have so many followers who I DM with every single day, and it's going to be really, really cool to finally get to meet them in person.
So what's the next incremental thing after the book that you want to do? Is there a hire that you want to do next? Is there do you want to get some space outside the home where you can do some things? As you're thinking about it, feeling your way along, what's the next thing?
Great question. On the personal front, the next thing, we yesterday bought a cabin up in the Santa Lucia Mountains. You were just there, the mountains that like divide Carmel from Big Sur. We just bought a cabin up there. So that's something that after the book tour, we'll like put a lot of effort into. It'll be a very DIY effort. It's like truly an hour deep into the mountains. So like getting a contractor there to even do a site inspection would like bankrupt us. So it's going to be a DIY effort, and we are not DIYers. So that'll be a fun thing. I
see a video crew. I see another book. It's all coming.
I know. Like,
what to do when you have a damn cabin in the woods.
What to do when you bought a broken down cabin in the middle of the freaking mountains and you are so inept at any sort of home skills. Because that's personal, what I'm really looking forward to. We have 3 boys, like I said. They are growing up in not the digital area that your kids did of like simple video game consoles, but of one where screens and TVs are constantly in their face. And we
and always on data resources where there's no
Yes.
unanswered questions.
Yes. So I'm really looking forward to having, there's no cell phone service, there's no internet service. So I'm really looking forward to having
You're torturing the damn kids.
a space to torture my kids. Exactly. I'm really looking forward to having a space to torture my kids off
Go
the
to the
grid.
cabin. I don't want to go,
I know.
Mom.
Oh, I know. We're already anticipating that, but that's George's and my job, right? Make it a place that's so much fun that they really get to like be kids and enjoy the outdoors and the community, because there is a little community up there. And so creating a community up there
of other parents torturing their kids.
Of other parents who love to torture their kids. So that's my personal thing I'm looking forward to. Professionally, I really I started a podcast in November. It's called So Into That. And I have guests on.
I like that title.
What we're into right now. I'd love to have you on. Actually, you'd be my first male guest.
I'm not into that.
You're not into that. Well, fine. You're not invited. So it's called So Into That. We talk about what we're into right now. I hear really interesting stories of female entrepreneurs and authors and artists.
And what streaming shows did they just discover? I in my circles, we hear that a lot. You're at dinner with someone. You watch anything interesting lately?
Oh, yes, exactly. Yes, we talk about the shows we're watching. Exactly. I see. Yes. Okay. So tomorrow I'm having on my podcast the author of this romance book that was like a cult phenomenon during COVID. And it's now like the #1 streaming movie on Prime, The Idea of You, Anne Hathaway, young British guy. Yeah. So the author of that book is coming on. So I'm really excited to hear her story of how she went from she was like an indie author, like maybe even published it on her own, to like Anne Hathaway being in her movie. So I'm looking forward to, I feel like right now I'm so busy with the book. Like this morning I was on calls all morning, planning the book tour, book press, all the things. I'm so full throttle in the book world right now. And I'm so psyched about that. But I look forward to, you said, what's my next thing? So I think my next thing will be like really getting to refocus on the podcast and on growing it. I haven't monetized it yet. I haven't done ads. Just because it hasn't been like really my full focus yet. So I haven't been able to grow it beyond just my existing audience of listeners. So I look forward to like really going full throttle on trying to grow the podcast because I really, really enjoy it and connecting with other people.
You are a conglomerate.
It's a lot of different. I know. When I launched the podcast, like even my mom was like, "Caro, why? Like,
calm down.
Just calm down." I was like, "I can't. I don't know why I'm doing this." But here we are.
So tell us what you did with our Harry and David folks.
Oh my gosh, I had so much fun with your Harry and David folks. Bridget,
I saw the video you did. It's really good. You're so likable. You're so natural, which is why you're so successful. But I was just really proud to see what you did for us.
Thank you. Well, I really loved working with your team. And I will say, speaking of people who I've met through the internet, who have become like my internet friends, Bridget, who is on your team.
I know who she is. She's a whirlwind.
She's a whirlwind. She has been following me for like 4 years. And like maybe 2 years ago, I want to say she works for a company that you guys bought.
Alice's Table.
Yeah. And so you guys absorbed her. So she messaged me, I swear, 2-3 years ago and was like, I just started working at 1-800-Flowers. I want to get you in. Like, you'd be so cool with this brand. Like, I really want you. And I was like, great. Like, keep me in the loop. And so we'd kind of talk every now and then. It wouldn't happen. And maybe 5 months ago, she was like, I finally have it. Like, I've got the opportunity. We're going to do this. Mother's Day. What do you think? And so we started just crafting this vision for how I could work with Harry and David and 1-800 and so many of your brands, and sharing them with moms and sharing them as like really great gifts for moms, and also just how they can make moms' lives easier in the case of many of the products. And so she came out with a team of photographers and videographers a month ago, 2 months ago, and we shot a ton of content. My kids are in it. My husband's in it. She actually we've been texting all day. She just sent me
those are good looking kids. And by the way, that guy, George, he's pretty cute too.
Pretty cute. They're all pretty cute guys. The kids though, really, they had so much fun. My oldest, Mattis, who's 5, still will be like, remember when we had Bridget here and all those camera people? Because it was like lit up like a Christmas tree. Like we had lighting and it was a full production.
do they genuinely like those Wolferman's English muffins?
Genuinely, they are the biggest English muffins, guys. And I will say we hadn't tried them before. Now we are obsessed with them because she sent them before so we could try them. I have another package in my fridge that I now am buying for them. They're so good.
One usage you suggested in the video you did for us was they make the perfect English the perfect hamburger bun.
Yes.
The consistency, the thickness, especially if you don't make the burger too thick.
Mm-hmm.
I like my burgers a little thinner.
Me too.
And
I love it.
They are the perfect bed.
Yeah, they're perfect. There was a restaurant in New York City in the West Village called the Spotted Pig, and they served their burgers RIP Spotted Pig. They served their burgers on an English muffin, and that's the first time I had it. And I was like, oh, this is the perfect, you want that sourdough bite. It's like a little bit sour and tangy to contrast.
Now my mouth is watering again. First the egg salad, now it's
good.
the English muffins for the burger.
So yeah, no, it was so much fun, and I wish that I could flip this podcast around and interview you because the business that you've grown is so impressive and cool, and I just love your strategy of finding these interesting companies and bringing them under your umbrella. So it was really fun. I got to work with Popcorn Factory, Harry and David, Sherry's Berries, Cheryl's Cookies. Like, you have quite a portfolio. And so it was a blast.
And I get to do a little bit like you. I get to do fun things with the people I want to be with and the people I want to work with. And so it doesn't seem much like work, except I have a little bit of that crazy streak of yours too. And I tend to say yes to way too many things.
Yeah, look at you. You're running like 15 businesses and you have a podcast.
I don't
what are we
doing?
Yeah, you don't run anything.
Caro, you're terrific, and I'm so glad we're finally working together. I just don't understand why it took Bridget so long to
I know.
lassoed.
Come on, Bridget.
She's a force of nature, and I'm so glad she found you for us and that we're working together. I can't wait to talk to you again when the book is coming out. We can get our little old community to focus in on the things that you're doing. But I hope we get to do a whole bunch of things together between now and then. And you can find a little 10-minute segment in your day that we can creep into it.
Yes, I would love that. And maybe I'll get to meet you on the book tour too.
Not going to happen.
What if I carve out a 10-minute solo? You don't have to come to the event with all the 35.
As long as you bring the egg salad recipe.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's a deal. I'll see you there.